The night sky was silent above the great empty plains of the alien world. A single human soldier named Ethan moved forward slowly step by step with his heavy pack on his back. He had been chosen by command for a mission that no other soldier wanted to take because they said it was almost certain death. The order was simple: destroy the alien monster that had been leading attacks against human colonies and return with proof. But deep inside, Ethan knew that nothing about this mission was simple at all. He remembered the faces of his family before he left Earth, their voices full of hope and pride. He remembered the graves of his comrades who had fallen in the war, their names carved into cold stone walls. Every step he took through the broken alien ruins carried that weight. The ground was filled with ashes and twisted metal from battles. Long ago, walls were scarred with burns, as if fire itself had tried to erase everything that lived here. The radio in his helmet was quiet, except for the distant static command had told him this would be his last chance to prove himself loyal to humanity. They said the monster was cunning, ruthless, and that it could never be reasoned with. Ethan had no doubt at first because he had been raised to believe all aliens were dangerous. Yet as he walked deeper into the ruins, something strange began to grow in him. A question that he could not silence: what if the stories were not all true? The ruins stretched for miles like a graveyard of another civilization, statues broken and lying on the ground, halls once built with skill, now torn open like old wounds. Ethan felt a chill that was not from the air, but from the silence. It was as if every stone whispered about lives lost, lives erased. His boots crunched on the sand as he entered a wide chamber. The lights on his helmet revealed old carvings on the walls, figures that looked like families gathering, children playing, leaders speaking to crowds. They did not look like monsters, they looked like people trying to live. Ethan pushed the thought away and reminded himself of his mission. But still it stayed in his mind, pressing harder with every step. He tightened his grip on the rifle. The metal was cold in his hands, a reminder of why he was here. He had sworn to fight for humanity. He had sworn to follow orders. And yet his heart beat faster as he realized he was close to the place where the monster was hiding. The corridors grew darker, the air heavier. He could hear faint sounds ahead, a low breath, a slow movement. Every muscle in his body tensed as he pressed himself against the wall, listening carefully. This was it. The target was near. He thought of his family again. He thought of the commanders who had looked into his eyes and told him he was humanity's last hope. He thought of the endless war that had taken so much already, and he wondered if killing one more enemy would really change anything. Step by step he moved forward, his weapon raised. The sound grew clearer, like the voice of some creature breathing in pain. At the end of the hall, the chamber opened wide, and the shadows spread across the broken floor. And then Ethan saw it. The monster was not what he had imagined. It was not some raging beast covered in claws and teeth. It was a figure slumped against the wall, wounded, its body trembling. Its eyes lifted slowly toward him, glowing faintly in the dark, not with rage, but with sorrow. Ethan froze. His finger hovered on the trigger. This was supposed to be the end of his mission, but instead, it was the beginning of something else. The alien spoke in a broken, heavy voice that shook the air. "Why do you kill us?" Ethan almost dropped his weapon when he heard the words. He had been told they could not speak his language. He had been told they were nothing but animals. Yet here was the so-called monster speaking to him with pain in its voice, and a question that cut deep into his heart. He did not answer. He could not answer because for the first time in his life, he did not know what the truth was. Ethan stood frozen in the chamber, his weapon still raised, but his heart pounding so hard, he felt it might break through his armor. The alien sat wounded against the wall, its strange body trembling with every breath, its eyes glowing faint, but filled with something Ethan could not name. The voice of the alien echoed again in broken words, heavy and slow. "Why do you kill us?" Ethan did not answer, his throat dry, his hand shaking on the trigger. This was the moment he had trained for, the moment command had prepared him for, yet it felt nothing like he had imagined. He had pictured a raging monster that deserved no mercy, Instead, before him sat a figure in pain, a figure that looked less like a beast and more like a soldier who had also lost too much. The silence stretched heavy between them, broken only by the low sound of the alien breathing. Ethan remembered the orders in his ear: destroy the target, do not hesitate, complete the mission. But hesitation was all that filled him now. For the first time he wondered if he had been sent here, not to protect humanity, but to bury a truth humanity did not want to face. The alien raised one of its hands, slowly, its movements weak as if it could barely lift its arm. It pointed toward the walls of the chamber, where old carvings glowed faint in the dim light. Figures of families carved in stone, children holding hands, mothers and fathers watching over them. Ethan stared in silence, his mind spinning. These walls were not the home of monsters, they were the memories of people. The alien spoke again, its voice raw and broken. You came to our stars and you fired first. We tried to speak, but you did not hear. We tried to show peace, but you brought fire. The words cut through Ethan sharper than any blade, because deep in his heart, he had always feared that humanity was not as innocent as Command claimed. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to say, no, we were attacked first. We were only defending ourselves. But the carvings around him and the sorrow in the alien's voice made his denial feel empty. He lowered his rifle just a little, though his hand still shook. Why should I believe you? He asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. The alien coughed, a sound that echoed like stones falling, and then from its chest it pulled a small device. The device lit up, showing images in the air, bright and clear. Ethan saw ships moving through space, alien ships shining with signals of light, signals that repeated patterns like greetings. Then he saw human fleets firing weapons, first tearing the ships apart before the signals could even finish. He saw alien cities burning. He saw children crying. He saw the same sorrow that filled human cities after attacks, and he saw this figure, this so-called monster, standing not as a beast, but as a leader trying to shield its people. Ethan felt his knees weaken. He leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Everything he had been told, everything he had believed, now cracked like thin glass. He remembered the commanders telling him the aliens were savage. He remembered the training vids that showed them as beasts without mercy. And now he stood face to face with one who had shown him proof that those stories were lies. The radio in his helmet crackled suddenly, the sharp voice of command breaking through the silence. Report, soldier, is the target destroyed? Ethan froze, his eyes locked on the wounded alien who waited silently for his answer. His finger hovered near the radio switch. He knew what command wanted to hear. They wanted him to say, yes, mission complete, target eliminated. But his chest burned with conflict, because now he did not know who the real monster was. He pressed the switch. Slowly, his voice steady, though his heart raced. Mission not complete, target has escaped, repeating, target has escaped. There was silence on the other end, followed by static, and then the cold reply. Find it, finish the mission, do not fail us again. Radio went quiet. Ethan lowered his weapon fully now, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like stone. The alien watched him, eyes dim but steady. Why, he asked softly, why did you not kill me? Ethan did not answer right away, because the truth was tangled inside him like a knot. Finally he said, because I am not sure anymore who the enemy really is. The alien closed its eyes for a moment, as if the words gave it some small relief. Then it looked at him again and whispered, my name is Kale. Ethan stood in silence, hearing the name repeat in his mind over and over, because giving the so-called monster a name made it even harder to believe the lies he had been told. He looked at Kale, and for the first time he wondered not how to kill, but how to understand. And in that silent, broken chamber, Ethan knew that his mission had already changed forever. Ethan stood in silence, his heart heavy, his rifle hanging loose at his side, while the alien Kale breathed weak and uneven against the wall. The chamber was quiet, except for the faint hum of the small device still glowing in Kale's hand, showing images of fleets and cities destroyed. Ethan kept staring at the holographic pictures, unable to pull his eyes away because each one tore Through the stories he had been told since childhood, he saw alien children with bright eyes running through fields. Before human fire burned those fields down, he saw families gathering under lights that were meant to signal peace before human warships. Cut through them with weapons, he saw Kale standing among his people, not as a beast, but as a protector trying to raise shields against the unstoppable wave of destruction. And with every image, Ethan felt his chest tighten because he realized that humanity had not been the victim. First, humanity had been the aggressor. The air in the chamber felt heavier as Kale lowered the device and whispered, "We never wanted this war. We wanted to trade. We wanted to share knowledge, but your leaders brought." Deaf Ethan closed his eyes, his mind spinning with memories of propaganda vids that had played in every training hall. They had shown aliens as killers. They had shown them attacking without reason. They had painted them as mindless creatures. But none of those vids had shown families. None had shown children. None had shown sorrow, only monsters. And now he stood face to face with the truth that the monsters might not have been the aliens at all. The radio in his helmet crackled again, the voice of command sharp and impatient. "Report, soldier, confirm elimination of target." Ethan clenched his teeth, his pulse racing. He could feel Kale's eyes on him, waiting for his choice. He pressed the switch and spoke slowly. "Target escaped." Repeating, "Target escaped, moving to pursue." There was a pause, then the cold reply, "Find it, finish it, or do not return." The radio went dead once more, and the silence in the chamber felt louder than any explosion. Ethan lowered his head and whispered to Kale, "I lied for you. I do not know why, but I did." Kale looked at him with eyes that glowed faint but soft, and said, "Maybe because you still have a heart." Ethan sat down on the broken stone floor, his weapon resting across his knees. He had never felt so lost in his life, because every step of his training had been built on a lie. He thought of the graves of his comrades and wondered now, had they died for truth or for the greed of leaders who wanted more stars, more worlds, more power? The weight of that question pressed down so hard, he thought it might crush him. Kale slowly shifted his body, wincing with pain, and said, "I will show you more if you are willing to see." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Kale touched the device again, and the images changed this time, showing the first meeting between humans and aliens long ago. The aliens had sent ships with open signals broadcasting patterns that represented peace, trade, and friendship. But the humans had misread the signals as threats. They had feared traps. They had fired first. Ethan watched the footage of human missiles striking ships that had not even raised weapons. The horror on the faces of the aliens was clear and undeniable. Ethan felt his throat close as he whispered, "This cannot be real. This cannot be true." But Kale answered, "It is the truth. We recorded everything because we knew you would never believe us without proof." Ethan pressed his hands to his head, his mind screaming with denial and guilt. If this was true, then humanity had started a war based on fear and ignorance, and he had been sent here not as a hero but as a tool to hide the mistake. He looked at Kale, his voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" Kale coughed, his body shaking, and said, "I want nothing but for you to see that we are not monsters. We are people just like you." Ethan swallowed hard because the more he listened, the more he saw the pain in Kale's eyes, the more he realized it was true. Time passed slowly in the chamber, every minute feeling heavy as stone. Ethan kept hearing the words of command in his head, "Find it, finish it, or do not return." He knew that soon they would send others after him, soldiers who would not hesitate to kill Kale. And he knew he could not allow that to happen, not after what he had seen, not after what he had learned. His loyalty to command, his duty as a soldier, his belief in humanity's, cause all of it was breaking apart piece by piece. In its place grew something new, something dangerous, but also something true. The thought that maybe his real duty was not to obey, but to protect what was right, even if it meant standing against his own people. Kale looked at him once more and whispered, "You must choose soon, because they will come and they will bring death with them." Ethan gripped his rifle tighter, not with the intent to kill Kale, but with the intent to fight whoever tried to silence the truth. He knew the path ahead was dark and full of danger, but he also knew that he could not turn back now. Chambers seemed to close in around him, the carvings on the walls watching him. Silently, as if asking what choice he would make, Ethan rose slowly, his body heavy with the weight of the decision, but his eyes steady now. For the first time he spoke with certainty. "I will not let them kill you." Cale stared at him in silence, then nodded with slow acceptance. The air between them was heavy with both fear and hope, and in that broken alien chamber, Ethan knew the truth had changed him forever. He was no longer just a soldier on a mission. He was now something else, a man caught between two worlds, a man who must choose not only for himself, but for the future of both species. The ruins shook with a low rumble as Ethan helped Cale stand, his arm wrapped around the alien to support its wounded body. Dust fell from the broken ceiling, and the silence of the chamber was broken by faint sounds in the distance. Engines faint and cold, echoing through the dead halls. Ethan froze because he knew those sounds too well. Human dropships were landing nearby. Cale looked at him with tired eyes and whispered, "They are here for you and for me." Ethan gripped his rifle tighter, his heart pounding, because command had already warned him, "Fail, and they will send others to finish what you could not." Now the others had come, soldiers who would not question orders, soldiers who would kill Cale without hesitation. Ethan guided Cale through the dark corridors of the ruins, every step echoing through the stone halls. His mind raced with fear and conflict, because each footstep brought him closer to betrayal of his own people. But each glance at Cale reminded him why he could not turn back. The alien leaned heavily on him, its breathing ragged, yet its eyes still held a faint light of hope. That hope weighed more on Ethan than all the orders he had ever received. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the sound of human soldiers grew louder. Shouts carried through the halls, boots striking the ground in rhythm, weapons clattering as they prepared to hunt. Ethan stopped and pressed Cale against the wall, raising his hand for silence. Voices echoed near. One soldier called out orders: "Search every chamber, find the target, eliminate without mercy, and if you see Ethan, bring him back alive." Ethan felt cold run through his veins, because now he was not only a soldier on a mission, he was also a traitor in their eyes. He looked at Cale and whispered, "We must move fast." Cale nodded slowly, though his body trembled with pain. Together they slipped through side passages, narrow and dark. The carvings on the walls flickered in the weak glow of Ethan's helmet light, watching silently, as if the dead of this world were bearing witness to his choice. Last they reached a chamber where broken pillars had fallen across the floor. Ethan paused, his breath heavy, his heart torn. He could fight, he could stay and face his own people, or he could keep running deeper into the ruins and hide Cale until a better chance appeared. But no choice felt safe, no choice felt easy. Cale looked at him with steady eyes and whispered, "You do not have to do this. They are your people. You can still return, and they will forgive you if you give me to them." The words cut through Ethan like a blade. He could feel the truth in them. He could go back, obey orders, and survive. But then he looked at Cale, truly looked at the scars, the sorrow, the faint glimmer of trust that had been placed in him. And Ethan realized survival without truth meant nothing. He shook his head slowly and whispered, "I cannot give you to them, not after what I have seen, not after what I know." Cale closed his eyes for a moment, as if the words gave him strength he had not felt in years. Then the alien whispered softly, "Then we must stand together." The sound of boots grew closer, weapons clinking, voices sharp and clear. Ethan raised his rifle, his body tense, his breath steady. For the first time in his life, the enemy was not the alien beside him, but the soldiers he had once called brothers. The thought tore at his heart, but his resolve did not break. He whispered to Cale, "Stay behind me. If they fire, I will protect you." Cale stared at him in silence, then gave a slow nod. The first shadows of soldiers appeared in the chamber, rifles ready, helmets shining in the dim light. They froze when they saw Ethan standing in front of Cale, his weapon raised, but not at the alien, at them. One of the soldiers shouted, "Ethan, what are you doing? Step aside." That thing is dangerous." Ethan did not move. His voice rang out firm and clear. "You are wrong. It is not a monster. It is not our enemy." The soldiers hesitated, confusion flickering among them. But their leader barked orders. "Ignore him. Fire on the alien." Ethan felt his chest tighten as he shouted louder, "No, you will not harm it." He stepped forward, placing himself fully between Kale and the soldiers, his weapon aimed at his own people. The chamber filled with silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. The soldiers shifted, uneasy, their eyes hidden behind visors, but their hesitation clear. The leader snarled, "Ethan, you are betraying your own kind. You are throwing your life away for a lie." Ethan felt the weight of the moment crash down on him, but he did not falter. He shouted back, "If protecting the innocent is betrayal, then yes, I am a traitor." His words echoed through the chamber, louder than any gunfire. For a heartbeat, the soldiers did not move, caught between orders and doubt. Kale whispered behind him, "Your choice is made." Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle and whispered back, "Yes, my choice is made." The soldiers began to spread out their weapons, raised tension building in the air like a storm about to break. Ethan knew a fight could come at any second, and he might not survive. But he also knew that his death would mean more now than his life had ever meant in blind obedience. And as the chamber trembled under the weight of this standoff, Ethan realized that this moment was the true battlefield, not between humans and aliens, but between truth and lies, between fear and understanding, between obedience and conscience. Chamber shook with the heavy sound of human boots pressing against the stone floor. As the soldiers closed in their rifles, raised their visors glowing, faint in the dim light, Ethan stood firm, his body tense, his weapon steady, his heart pounding like thunder inside his chest. Behind him, Kale leaned against the broken wall, his breath slow and heavy, yet his eyes fixed on Ethan as if he had already placed his final hope in him. The leader of the soldiers raised his hand and shouted, "Ethan, this is your last warning. Step aside, or we will treat you as the enemy." Ethan felt the weight of the words crash down like iron, because he knew that once he made this choice, there would be no return. He took a deep breath and shouted back, "If you fire, then fire at me, because I will not move aside." The soldiers hesitated, their rifles trembling slightly in their hands. One voice rose among them, uncertain and shaken. "He is protecting it. Maybe we should listen." But the leader barked back, "Silence. We have our orders. Eliminate the alien now." Ethan took a single step forward, placing himself even more firmly between Kale and the rifles aimed at them. His voice carried through the chamber, strong and filled with fire. "You call it a monster, but I have seen the truth. I have seen the families and the children we destroyed. I have seen proof that we fired first." His words echoed through the ruins, bouncing against the walls like a drumbeat of defiance. Some soldiers shifted uneasily, doubt flickering like small flames behind their visors. Kale whispered behind him, "Your words reach them. Do not stop." Ethan clenched his teeth and raised his rifle higher, not to fire, but to show his resolve. He shouted again, "We were told lies. We were told to kill without question. But I will not kill innocents anymore. If you truly believe in humanity, then ask yourselves what it means to be human." Silence that followed was long and heavy. The soldiers stood frozen, their weapons still raised, but their hearts caught in the storm of his words. Then one by one, slowly, a few of them began to lower their rifles, their hands shaking, their breaths unsteady. The leader turned on them, his voice furious, "What are you doing? Pick up your weapons, obey orders." But the doubt had already spread like cracks in glass. Ethan lowered his rifle slightly, but his eyes never left the leader. He said firmly, "Maybe you can silence me, maybe you can kill us both, but you cannot silence the truth anymore, because now you have seen my choice, and you must face your own." The leader raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Ethan, his finger tight on the trigger. For a heartbeat, the world stopped, the chamber filled with nothing but silence and the sound of breathing. Then one soldier stepped forward and pushed the leader's weapon aside, his voice shaking, but strong enough to echo through the chamber. "No, he is right. We must listen." More rifles lowered, more soldiers stepped back, their doubt stronger than their fear. The leader looked around, his anger boiling but his control slipping as he realized he no longer commanded their hearts. Ethan felt relief surge through him, though his body still trembled with the weight of the moment. He lowered his weapon completely and turned slightly to Kale, whispering softly, "It is over, at least for now." Kale stared at him with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light, his voice weak but filled with emotion. "You gave me something I thought was lost. You gave me hope." Ethan helped Kale step forward into the open, where the soldiers could see him fully. For the first time they saw not a monster, but a wounded figure breathing heavily, scars carved deep into his body, eyes filled with sorrow, not rage. The sight broke through their final defenses because they realized this was not the beast they had been taught to hate. This was someone who had suffered just as much as they had. The leader still stood rigid, his rifle shaking in his hands, his voice hoarse with fury. "This is betrayal, this is weakness." But no one followed him anymore. His commands fell empty in the heavy air. Finally, with a roar of rage, he turned and stormed out of the chamber, his footsteps fading into the ruins. The remaining soldiers stood in silence, their rifles lowered, their eyes on Ethan and Kale, waiting for what would come next. Ethan straightened his back, his voice calm but steady. "This war began with lies and fear, but it can end with truth and courage. You can return and tell command that the mission is complete and the monster is dead, or you can tell them the truth. The choice is yours." Soldiers exchanged looks, some filled with fear, others with uncertainty, but many with the same doubt that had already begun to burn in their hearts. One spoke softly, "We will not betray you. We will not betray the truth." Another added, "We have seen enough. We cannot return to lies." Their voices built together like the start of something larger than themselves. Kale stood weak but proud beside Ethan, his voice faint but clear. "Then maybe there is still a chance for peace." Ethan nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping over the soldiers, his chest heavy but steady. He whispered, "Maybe this is where humanity proves it is human." The chamber was silent once more, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence that comes before change. Ethan looked at Kale, then at the soldiers, and he knew the choice he had made would shape the future for both species. He had come to this world to kill a monster, but instead he had found truth, and in choosing that truth he had changed everything. And as he guided Kale out of the ruins into the cold alien night, Ethan felt a strange lightness in his chest for the first time in years. Not because the war was over, not because the danger was gone, but because he had chosen not obedience, not fear, but humanity. The end.